So today is Beis Tammuz. The real truth is, many think that Beis Tammuz is the Yom Tov of the previous Rebbe. That's what you always associate with. In fact, where I live in Farbrengen, some people have a little bit of a hard time. They always say Rebbe, Rebbe, Rebbe. Like, they say we mention the word Rebbe a little bit too often. I would say not often enough, but so when we announced there's a Farbrengen, a Beis Tammuz Farbrengen happening, so one of the guys said, only in one condition. He said, I'll come with one condition. He asked, what's the condition? He says, condition is that they won't mention the word Rebbe. He says, you Lubavitchers, you mention your Rebbe too much. So my son, I have a 13-year-old son that's a shtickle cheveman. He tells them, what do you do? He says, he sells hummus. He has a hummus restaurant. So he says, okay, so I'm willing to have a Chassidish Farbrengen without mentioning the word Rebbe, in condition that you run your shop for 3 days without mentioning the name hummus. He says, your whole essence of your shop is hummus. He says, the essence of a Chassid is a Rebbe. Like, how do you... So somebody else jumps up and says, you know what, no problem, we won't mention the word Rebbe. He says, why not? He says, because the whole idea of Beis Tammuz is the previous Rebbe. Okay, well, answer the previous Rebbe's name. So I said that I think that it's a big mistake, because Beis Tammuz is not just the previous Rebbe's Yom Tov. And as Rebbe makes sure to tell us a lot of times, it's, first of all, the previous Rebbe himself said that it's a Yom Tov of Kol Asher B'Shem Yisrael Yichuna. What does that mean? That even if his name, his title, Yichuna means like a title, that the only thing that makes him a Jew is the fact that when he's 25 years old in university and someone says, don't Jew me around, just because he associates his Yiddishkeit with being like a nickname, some kind of a name, not even in a respectful and honorable way, even it's his Yom Tov for him, says the previous Rebbe. Okay, so the Yom Tov is not just the previous Rebbe, every single Yid. How would Yiddishkeit look today if we wouldn't have had the previous Rebbe? How would Yiddishkeit look today if not the work of the previous Rebbe and the continuation of the work of the previous Rebbe? So Yud Beis Tammuz is not the previous Rebbe's Yom Tov only. It's every single Yid's Yom Tov. Think about it. How many Yidden were influenced by the previous Rebbe's actions, by the Talmidim of the previous Rebbe, the Chassidim of the previous Rebbe, till our times, if not for Yud Beis Tammuz? That's one thing. Besides that, there's a very, very interesting sikha that the Rebbe asks a question. We know the history of Yud Beis Tammuz goes like this. The previous Rebbe was arrested on Tesvav Sivan, the 15th day of Sivan. That's when he was arrested. He was arrested, as the previous Rebbe writes in his memories, 12:30 at night. They came to his house and they arrested him. They did a search and they arrested him. And the previous Rebbe was in jail for a little bit more than 2 weeks. That's all the time he was in jail. He suffered very, very badly. But he was there for about 2 weeks. On the day Gimmel Tammuz, which is 2 weeks and 3 days, Gimmel Tammuz, they called him into the office. When they called him into the office, the previous Rebbe said that there was something that said, it was like the verdict was like a piece of paper was a verdict, and it said something. The previous Rebbe didn't want to say what it said, but probably it meant that it was a sentence of the opposite of life. And on it, there was a line, it was crossed out. And the next thing was a sentence to be exiled for 10 years. And that was also marked down. Then it said 3 years exiled to a place called Kasrama. And that's what they told him, that's what he's about to do. They let him go say goodbye to his family. And he left to Kasrama. And as we know, 9 days later he came. He had to sign in a local police station. He came and the officer said, I'm the first one to tell you that you're off. But today we can't let you out, so you'll go out tomorrow. That's why we celebrate 2 days, Yud Beis and Yud Gimmel. So that announcement that he was told was on Yud Beis Tammuz. The Rebbe would always Farbrengen between Yud Beis and Yud Gimmel. That's like tonight, which connects both days together. However, if you think about it, what's a bigger Yom Tov? Gimmel Tammuz. Gimmel Tammuz is the time that was transferred from the opposite of life to being alive. Yud Beis Tammuz, compared to Gimmel Tammuz, is much smaller. Yud Beis Tammuz means that he was set for free, but he was alive. Gimmel Tammuz should have been such a greater Yom Tov if you think about it. Now Gimmel Tammuz is a Yom Tov that was mentioned by previous Rebbe a little bit, by our Rebbe a little bit, but the big emphasis on a Yom Tov, the big letter, the big thing, the Farbrengen, the Mamarim, everything was around Yud Beis Tammuz. Says our Rebbe, should have been the opposite. Good question. If you think about it, Gimmel Tammuz is so much greater than that way than Yud Beis Tammuz. And the Rebbe explains it. The Rebbe explains it in an unbelievable way. And the Rebbe says that if you think about it, you're right. You're 100% right that really the miracle of Gimmel Tammuz was a bigger miracle. But being that the whole essence of a Rebbe is to be united with the Chassidim, so what type of life is it? The whole essence of the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rabbi in general is to be with their Chassidim. A Rebbe needs his Chassidim, Chassidim needs the Rebbe. So even though on Gimmel Tammuz there was such a great big miracle happened, and the big miracle was that it was transferred from the opposite of life to life, Aschal to the beginning of the redemption, but a Rebbe that can't be with his Chassidim is not a Rebbe. It's not a life. So only when the previous Rebbe actually was able to unite with his Chassidim, that's when we say that's called a celebration. And that's why the emphasis of the previous Rebbe, later on of our Rebbe, wasn't so much on Gimmel Tammuz, even though it seemed like in short term it was a bigger miracle. It was on Yud Beis, Yud Gimmel Tammuz, because that's when the Rebbe was actually able to unite with Chassidim. That's when the Rebbe could actually be expressed. That's when the Rebbe becomes a Rebbe. And that's why the big Yom Tov among the Rabbeim was Yud Beis Tammuz. The day that the Frierdiker was actually let out and able to be united with Chassidim. So that's reason number one why Beis Tammuz is such a big Yom Tov. And that's why it's not just the Yom Tov of the previous Rebbe, it's the Yom Tov of our Rebbe and the Yom Tov of Chassidim. So l'chaim, it's Yom Tov. Chaim, what do you say? Besides that, מה קרה טוב? Baruch Hashem.
Which is the water? Which is
This is the mashka, this is the water. This one's a mix. I can't drink regular mashka. Chaim. Besides that, it's not just the previous Rebbe's Yom Tov, it's a lot of it is our Rebbe's Yom Tov. And I'll explain. A lot of the reason that we are able to celebrate Yud Beis Tammuz, that the Yom Tov of Yud Beis Tammuz actually happened, was in a merit of our Rebbe. In fact, no, practically. In fact, it was one year that the Rebbe Farbrengen Yud Beis Tammuz, one of the Chassidim, said a lot of l'chaim. He said a lot of l'chaim. And in the middle of the Farbrengen, he got up and he starts screaming. He says, "You think," he tells all the Chassidim, "you think Yud Beis Tammuz, the Frierdiker Rebbe's Meifes, it was our Rebbe's Meifes." And he starts speaking in front of the Rebbe. So it's our Rebbe's Meifes. And the Rebbe's like, no, keep calm. And he's saying, "No, it's not the Frierdiker, it's the Rebbe. He's the one that made Yud Beis Tammuz." And the truth is, this Chassid was right. And I'll say the background story. The story went as follows. Now, this story afterwards, I'll connect it on from what I heard from my father-in-law, the story goes like this. The story is Tov Reish Pei Zayin, 1927 is when the actual redemption happened. Anybody could guess who was our Rebbe at the time? Who was our Rebbe? Our Rebbe only got married when? No, Beis, 1929, winter 29. Who was our Rebbe at the time? Anybody know? Our Rebbe was before being a Chassid. Our Rebbe that night was coming back with the Rebbetzin. They went out before the Chassid. That's when they met. They came back. They went out before the Chassid Kala. Then there was a long break in between because it's a whole story that they wanted the Rebbe's parents to come, but they were on a shidduch date that night, and they were coming back. And as they're coming back, they see this was like 12:30 at night. You have to understand, 12:30 at night in Leningrad is not light yet. It's like, if you could ever say you just finished Ma'ariv. Yeah. It was like still like the beginning of the evening. And they're walking and they see that all the lights are on. And Rebbe Tzemach tells our Rebbe, "I think we have visitors in the house." Visitors meaning not regular visitors, but KGB, then they were called NKVD, uncalled visitors. She says, "I think we have visitors in the house." So the Rebbe told her, "Go into the house. And if you see that there are visitors there, go out to the window and tell me we have guests. And I'll start acting." What does that mean to act? What the communists were very good at doing was, first thing, to destroy all evidence. Go prove that he was actually arrested. Go prove which jail he's in. And by the time anybody realizes what it's going to be way too late. They say, "Oops, we're really sorry, but whatever we planned on doing was already done." In fact, if you look at the Frierdiker Rebbe's memories, it's all in writing. Frierdiker Rebbe said they had all kinds of plans what to do that night with him. And what they used to do was they would put him in some kind of a car and go and disappear. Take weeks, sometimes even months, till they discovered where he was, and if he was, what exactly was done. That was usually their plan. What our Rebbe did was, he told the Rebbetzin Chaim Moshka, as I said, they're still Chas and Kala, they weren't even married yet. They weren't even engaged yet. He said to her, "Go in, and if you see that those type of guests that we're assuming are there, come out to the window, tell me that there's guests." And that's what she did. She went out the window, and she said, Mirhot Gas, have guests. And what our Rebbe did was, he ran right away to all kinds of homes of Chassidim, and they put in every junction, every intersection, they put Chassidim standing there. So when the car, after they arrested, it took a few hours, the whole search in the house. But when the car started driving, every time they took a turn, there was a different chassid standing in that corner, or whatever junction it was, whatever intersection it was. And by the time they came into the actual jail, they knew exactly which jail it was. So when they started using like international pressure on the Russians, they knew exactly that the Frierdiker Rebbe A is arrested and B, where exactly is he arrested. That's how they started using that's where they started putting all the pressure. That was A. Second thing was, our Rebbe right away ran to the previous Rebbe's secretary. He had a secretary called Reb Chaim Lieberman. And he told him right away to take all the papers, most of the paperwork wasn't by the previous Rebbe's apartment. Most of the paperwork was by Reb Chaim Lieberman, by the secretary. And he said right away, destroy all the paperwork. Because the next person that will be searched will probably be him. Third thing, the Rebbe sent messengers to different chassidim that he knew were also on the aim of these communists, and he told them, either disappear, and on the way to disappear, make sure to destroy all the evidence. So a lot of what the communists do, they would usually try to hit one, and they knew that afterwards it's going to start spreading around. So the fact that they arrested the previous Rebbe was a fact. But A, everybody knew where he was taken to, so the pressure was very, very pinpointed to where it was and where the previous Rebbe was. No secrets. Second of all, any other evidence besides that was all destroyed that night in the merit of our Rebbe. And everybody else that had to disappeared. Reb Chaim destroyed everything that he destroyed. Some of the stuff he destroyed, he couldn't find where to throw it away. So he swallowed a lot of the papers. And he told my father was very in touch with Reb Chaim Lieberman. He said that till his last day he suffered from, I guess our body doesn't even know how to digest paper that well. But he said he suffered till his last day from the amounts of paper that he tried to digest that night. But the fact of the matter was, he saved many chassidim, and obviously he saved the situation. So the first person that really, Begashmis, helped this great redemption of the previous Rebbe was our Rebbe, whatever he did that same night. Now I'll tell you something that I heard, a very interesting story. 1992, Tafshin Nun Beis, which was the end of 91, Chanukah Tafshin Nun Beis. My father-in-law, so Gesund Zayin, got a shlichus from the Rebbe to go and print Tanyas in Russia. Spoke about this a little bit, whoever was here. And it was a very interesting shlichus because in the summer of 91, they passed by dollars with his partner, his name was Rabbi Zayantz from Brazil. They passed by dollars. Rabbi Zayantz was the Rebbe Shliach, still is, Rebbe Shliach printing Tanyas. He's like the person in charge, one of the people in charge. Shalom Jacobson has the numbers, but he's always printing Tanyas around the world. And Label Zayantz passed. This was summer of 91. Things started looking a little bit more positive in Russia. So he passed by the Rebbe and he tells the Rebbe, I would like to go to Russia and print Tanyas in Russia. So the Rebbe ignored him. The Rebbe didn't answer. So he wrote a letter, told the Rebbe, I want to print Tanyas. Everybody knows Rabbi Zayantz. Rabbi Zayantz, he doesn't take no as an answer. Okay, that's just the type of person. So he passed once, he tells the Rebbe ignored his request. So he writes a whole sharp letter to the Rebbe that he really thinks this is going to be Mashiach, and you have to go to Russia and you have to print Tanyas, that's where it's going to come from. And the Rebbe didn't answer the letter. So when he passed by the Rebbe the next Sunday, the Rebbe says to him, what's with you? You don't know what's Russia. I come from Russia. Let me tell you what Russia is. You will arrive in Russia with a printing machine and with papers, and what they're going to say will be what? That you came to print all kinds of propaganda, anti-communist propaganda. It's going to take us months till we discover where you are, because they're going to lock you up somewhere. And then it's going to take you who knows how long till we're able to get you out of there. And we're going to have to get this diplomatic connections, and it's so dangerous. What's with you? It's not an option. So Label what? Backed off. The Rebbe said, not an option, finished, done. Cheshvan. This is about 2 months later, 3 months later. He passes by dollars, and the Rebbe says, what's with your trip to Russia? It's like 2-3 months later. He says, what's with your trip to Russia? So Label says, oh, we're doing it right away. Like he had no problem, right away. So the Rebbe gives him an extra $1, and the Rebbe says, you'll be back. Later on, they got through the Rebbe's secretary, they got different different specific things what the Rebbe wanted. What the Rebbe really, really wanted was that when they go to Russia, they should print the Tanya in the jail where the Alter Rebbe sat. This was like the Rebbe really asked that they should print it in a jail where the Alter Rebbe sat. And it was the Rebbe gave him a few other things. The Rebbe gave him a few dollars, and the Rebbe said they should change the dollars to rubles, but the Rebbe said not in the black market, only legal in the bank. So when they came to the bank said we don't have such big amounts of money. It was $10. Yeah, we don't have such big amounts of money, so come back tomorrow. It's a whole big thing. However, they planned their trip. You have to understand, Russia. Everybody remembers 1991. There wasn't too much technology going on. I mean, they were very good technically, like getting people to land on the moon. That was back in the 60s. But food they didn't have for the people. There's no food for the people. And they landed in Russia. Cost them a fortune. In 91, it cost them just the cargo, flying the cargo to Russia, because they didn't count on anything. People told them there's nothing there. You have to take the gasoline, you have to take the printing machine, you have to take the generator, you have to take everything with you. I think the cargo back then, we're talking, came out 30 years ago, just the cargo was $25,000, not including their own tickets and whatever. They landed in Russia, and they had a whole plan where they're about to print the Tanya. They printed in a bunch of places in Moscow and in Leningrad. It's Petersburg today. In Leningrad, they really went to the jail where the Alter Rebbe was, the big palace, fortress. They had to pay a lot of money to bribe whoever they had to bribe, and they went in. They printed the Tanya there. So the Tanya printed in the jail Alter Rebbe sat, and then they printed those 10 days. They printed, I think, 60 editions of Tanya, at different places, different locations. It was in Moscow and in Leningrad. Then, when they were in Leningrad, my father-in-law, Chap the Good Mishigas, says, I have a great idea. What's my idea? My idea is, we printed in a jail of the Alter Rebbe. How about we print in the previous Rebbe's apartment? This is the apartment where they arrested the previous Rebbe for spreading Yiddishkeit, for spreading Chassidus. Let's print the Tanya in the previous Rebbe's apartment. Back then, it wasn't too hard to do. They went into the apartments. You see, the big apartments that used to be back then, during the communist era, they divided into different sections. I think they had 6 families living there at the time. They bribed whoever they had to bribe, they paid whoever to pay, and they set the machine, and they printed a Tanya in the previous Rebbe's apartment, where he was arrested from Tsfat of Tammuz Tophesh Pizan. They printed the Tanya, and this was just one of the editions. At night, they would have a guy, he was a binder. So he would come at night and he would bind all the Tanyas that they did that they printed that day. And he would set it up, he would organize it, and he would bind it. My father told me he would bind it like with a needle and thread, like putting it together. And by the time they finished the 10, 11 days that they were in Russia, they had a box with 60 Tanyas in it. The rest they left in Russia to bind later on, but they prepared for the Rebbe. And they came into the Rebbe. This was the 5th day Hanukkah, Tov Shinun Beis. They came in with a box, and they told when they walked in, they told Rabbi Groner, it was early in the morning, they just came in, they said, we just arrived. And now that we just arrived, we have some Tanyas for the Rebbe. So Rabbi Groner says, no problem, give me the box, I'll put it in. They said, no. We went into all this trouble, we're going to do it ourselves. Next time we pass, we'll do it. I guess he went to the Rebbe's room, he comes out, and he tells them the Rebbe wants you right now to come into Yechidus. No preparation, no nothing. He said he had enough time to wash his hands, put in a gartel, and come with the box. It's a long story, I'm not going to get into all the details right now, but the fact of the matter was they came in, and it was the 5th night Hanukkah. The Rebbe says, being that it's the 5th day Hanukkah, the minhag is on Hanukkah, we give Hanukkah gelt. It's the nicest Hanukkah gelt I've ever received. I've never received such nice Hanukkah gelt. And it was very heavy. They told the Rebbe, it's shver, it's a little bit hard to pick up. The Rebbe said, Tanya can design shver, Tanya can't be hard, Tanya can't be heavy, and they put it down. And then the Rebbe asked them about the different editions of Tanya. So the main Tanya that they wanted to show the Rebbe was which one? was the one from the jail. That's what the Rebbe sent me from the Alter Rebbe's jail. They showed the Rebbe, and the Rebbe asked details, and then they showed the other Tanya, some Moscow, everything else. And then came so-called, what my father-in-law says, my Meshigas, like my own thing. What was no Meshigas? He tells the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says, any other Tanyas you want to tell me about? So he pulls out the Tanya that was printed in the Frierdiker Rebbe's apartment. And he pulls it out and he tells the Rebbe, this Tanya was my idea. He took credit. It was my idea. This Tanya was printed in the apartment where the Frierdiker Rebbe was arrested from, where the Frierdiker Rebbe lived. The Rebbe said, in fact, this apartment, this was headquarters of Lubavitch, if you think about it. Like, this was headquarters of Lubavitch for 4 years. From 1923, the previous Rebbe moved to Leningrad till 1927. So he says this was Tanya from headquarters of Lubavitch, Lubavitch to Leningrad. So the Rebbe says, where is exactly the apartment? So they said the name of I think it was called the Machovaya 22. Lo Machovaya was the name. So Machovaya 22. So he says, yeah. My father-in-law knew the story about the Rebbetzin coming out of the window and telling the Rebbe. He wanted to make sure the story is actually true. He decided he has to get approved. So he says to the Rebbe said, where exactly in the apartment? So they describe what the apartment looked like, and what does it look like now? They told him his family's living there. After he says it, he tells the Rebbe, says, and the Tanya we printed in a very, very special room. So the Rebbe says, what's special about this room? So Aishra said that we were there. The Chassidim said that there's a rumor. And the rumor is that when the NKVD, the Secret Service, when they came to arrest the Rebbe came with the Rebbetzin. And he told the Rebbetzin go into the house. And the Rebbetzin should look out from the window and should tell them that there's guests, that we have these guests. And that's when the Rebbe started acting in order to redeem the previous Rebbe. So we heard that this is the room where it happened. And these are the windows where the Rebbetzin looked out. So we decided this will be the room because that way it's going to connect also the previous Rebbe and also the Rebbetzin and also our Rebbe to the idea of Tanya. So the Rebbe says, which room exactly was it? So it describes. So the Rebbe said, the windows, windows. What street did they face? In other words, what street were they facing? Was it facing the inside? There was some kind, I guess, of a inside courtyard. Was it the windows facing the courtyard, or was the windows facing the street itself? So he said it was facing the street itself. The Rebbe says, did it have two windows, one from this side of the road, one from that? It was a corner apartment, yeah? So was it two windows, one from this side, one from that side? So yeah, it was not. So the Rebbe said, that's a story and it's true. That's where it happened. That's where it happened. So the Rebbe was very happy about the time, right? Father says in a way like that was like they're pulling out the different Tanyas. The Tanya that Rebbe the most asked questions about. The Rebbe said, that's a story. The Rebbe said that the Chassidim say that the Rebbe told the Rebbe from the thing. So the Rebbe says, where was the window? They said. So yeah, the Rebbe said that's the story and that's the window. That's the story, that's the window. So I said that Rebbe Tzemach Mushka was coming back with the Rebbe, and he told her, go in. That's what I said before. He said, go in, and when I pass, I'll pass there and tell me if there's really guests, and that's what I'm going to start doing. So they knew the story, like we all do, but they printed it in that specific room where the story happened. But he wanted to get it actually approved. He wanted to make sure the story actually happened. So he told the Rebbe this was so the Rebbe asked him, the window was facing this side or that side. Was it two windows in one room? The Rebbe said, yeah, that was the story. That's what happened. Yeah, that's the story. That's what happened. So that Tanya was printed in I think that's how we connected all the stories together. So as we were saying before, this Yom Tif of Yud Beis Tammuz is an unbelievable Yom Tif. It's a Yom Tif, as we said, it's first of all, it has to do with every single Yid, even a Yid that his nickname is a Yid, Asher B'Shem Yisrael Yechuneh, and even if this nickname is not always used in a nice way, he's also part of the redemption of Yud Beis with Gimmel Tammuz. It's a great Yom Tif because Yud Beis with Gimmel Tammuz, as we said before, is the Yom Tif of the Rebbe. It's the Yom Tif of the Rebbe. Why is the Yom Tif of the Rebbe? Because Gimmel Tammuz, we said, is a very, very big miracle from the opposite of life to life. But Yud Beis Tammuz, and with the actual essence of the Rebbe, comes out that the Rebbe is able to be with his Chassidim. That's Yud Beis Tammuz. And Yud Beis Tammuz for sure are Yom Tif, because the fact of the matter is that our Rebbe had such a big part in this redemption of Yud Beis Tammuz, and the fact of the matter is that Yud Beis Tammuz started a whole new Aveda after the previous Rebbe went out. So it seemed like it was very, very painful because the previous Rebbe for beginning was exile. Then they saw that this exile is actually what brought the redemption. That's when Beis Tammuz started with really spreading, because the previous Rebbe was forced by the communists to leave Russia because of the story with Beis Tammuz. The condition was he could leave jail, he could be redeemed, but he has to leave Russia. They were too nervous about his influence among Chassidim. So that's what caused it started spreading of the Mayonis, of the well springs, in such a great way till our days. So l'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim. Shpek Yom Tov Mitzvah Hashem. Shpek Kulam Shechas, l'chaim, l'chaim. My father-in-law's name is Rabbi Chanim, Zalman Chanim. And one of his jobs that he got from the Rebbe, besides printing, he was like the Rebbe's printer in many ways. So he printed the sichas all the years, all the sichas. But the Vad also got the job of printing the Tanyas. Those years, they were printing Tanyas. Every time they were passed by the Rebbe, they would come with a box of Tanyas. Yeah.
So one of the students that was there by the Gula of Tammuz, the Rebbe asked him to tell the story that he remembers in the Beis Tammuz.
Yeah.
He started to say the story. The moment he started to say it, the Rebbe swallowed. The Rebbe said, "I'll catch it." That's until now.
Reb Chaim really, in that way, it was very. It was in that way, he had a lot of Mesiras Nefesh a lot of Mesiras Nefesh. There's regarding Am Yisrael receiving the Torah, there's a little bit of a contradiction. If anybody ever learns like the Midrashim a little bit, he finds some kind of a contradiction. What's the contradiction? In one end, they tell us this interesting story. It's like a pre-1A classic. That they tell us a story that Hashem was looking who to give the Torah to, right? So he went to different nations, and they always change the nations according to what's happening politically and around. Remember, where I live in a town called Farbrengen. People are very politically correct there, extremely, in many ways. One time, a bunch of seminary girls wanted to come to do some kind of a show. So they asked if they could come to the kindergartens. They said they have a whole show like Kovic Shluas, on a Shluas. They want to put a whole skit. I said, for sure. What's it about? It's about the different mountains. You know, the story about the mountains, where's the Torah going to be given on? Mount Carmel, Mount Hermon. We said, no problem. They put a whole skit with backdrops, and it was great. So I went to the kindergarten. I said, I have a very educational skit I would like to give. Do you mind if these girls kids? Great, Rabbi, go ahead. They got all the kids together, probably 4 classes together. The girls did it. It was very nice. Where's the Torah going to be given? You know, it should be in Mount Hermon, Mount Carmel, Mount this, and Har Sinai, which is so humble, and showed the Torah can only be given on a humble thing. Very, very successful. Everybody clapped their hands, but they finished too early. In other words, they were planning on, the kindergarten was planning on a 45-minute session. They only did 20 minutes. So the teacher of the kindergarten said, no, you have any other skits you could tell the kids? So what's the next story you always say? That Hashem went to different nations and offered them the Torah and thing. But these girls had some very developed theories about different types of nations. And they started explaining how they went to the Arabs, which are a bunch of Ganovim, and they went to the Jews, they're a bunch of murderers. And I know they're making up names, you know. Now, first of all, you're not supposed to say this. In general, it's not always, not all Arabs are Ganovim, not all Jews are whatever. But the big problem, Farbrengen was very proud of the fact that they have Jews workers there, and they have Muslim kids, and they have Christian teachers. In the middle of the skit, the principal comes over and says, you have to stop it right now. Stop it right now. So the Medrash is a Medrash, but who exactly they applied the Medrash on who? That's really, as I said, every generation applied it on different, they had the Cossacks, and they had the Bandits, and they had different people that they put it on. But the bottom line of the Medrash is, whoever they went to or they didn't go, whoever they went to, and they said whatever they said, in the end, bottom line, they came to Am Yisrael, right? That's the end of the story. They came to Am Yisrael, and Am Yisrael said what? Nasiv and Nishma. We get very excited about it, right? We get very excited about it. We have Beshal Sheikdimu, we have so many Ma'amarim by Nasiv and Nishma, and the 2 crowns that they got. Sheikdimu, Nasiv and Nishma, beautiful. So that's one story they always told us about. True story.
You have to give the other nations credit, though. They were very honest.
They were very honest. Yeah, they were honest. Well, the interesting thing was that they knew which nation to ask, which nation to tell them which one of the things. But bottom line is, you're right. The nations were very, very honest. But the bottom line was that Nasiv and Ishmael get all emotional. Am Yisrael loved it, and it said, whatever. We have so much trust and love and unconditional love, and everything is fine, beautiful, sweet, and dandy. Right? That's the bottom line. However, you open the Gemara, and the Gemara says, "Vayisyatzvu besachti sahar," right? So literally, what does it mean? Not literally. The way you understand besachti sahar means below the mountain, right? But the Gemara says, don't understand it that way. Understand it literally. What does it mean besachti sahar? Right under the mountain. He took the mountain, he put it on top of the heads, and said, "Yeah, if you want to receive the Torah, mutav, and if not, this is where you're going to be your burial place, yeah? This is where you're going to be buried." You know what it sounds like? Imagine you have a chas and kala. And the chas and kala are about to get married. And the chassan gets all excited. He comes over to the kala, he does a badekin, he comes to the chuppah, everybody's emotional, she's going around the chassan. Yeah, everything is nice, beautiful. They already read the Rebbe's letter. They say the first two brachas, and then he's about to pull out the ring, right? He puts the ring in his left hand, pulls out a baseball bat, and says, okay, are we on, or this is your last decision you'll be making? And that's exactly what it sounds like. In other words, everything sounds so beautiful. Nasib and Nishma, Gdimu Nasib and Nishma. And then what does the Abish do? He puts the mountain on top of them and says, okay, are we with? Are you in? Or this is your last decision you'll be making or not making? Because there's a strict contradiction here. And many Mefarshim try to connect this and understand what's going on here. So I found 3 answers. One of them is Maharal. The Maharal asks, why did the Abish have to do this thing of putting the mountain on top of them? They were willing to get it anyways. They were willing to accept it. They were so loving and caring. Why do you have to put the mountain on top of them? Says the Maharal, unbelievable thing. Says, it's brought down in Torah. We know the Abish keeps whatever it says in Torah. Magid Dvar Yaakov. Whatever the Abish tells us to do, himself does. It says in Torah that if somebody forces a woman into a marriage, right? Like unwillingly, lo yuchol l'shalcho kol yomov. You can never divorce her. She wants, you can get divorced. But on his side, he can never divorce her. Lo yuchol l'shalcho kol yomov. Says the Maharal, what's the idea? He says, when the Eibishter did this twist, yeah, so it came to a point that the Eibishter could never detach his connection from us, right? In other words, everything was nice and willing, but the minute he put the oinus, he put some kind of a force upon us, so now Am Yisrael could never disconnect again, and he's with us forever. It's a nice explanation. Explains it, but that's like the point of the Maharal's explanation. He can't. We could do whatever we want, but he can't. On his side, he can't. And even we think we do, we can never do. Maybe we'll figure that a drop later. That's a nice. It's a very interesting understanding of the Maharal. Second understanding comes from the Tildes. Tildes Yaakov Yosef. The Tildes Yaakov Yosef. His name was Yaakov Yosef Katz. He came from the city called Polno. Polno is a city in Ukraine. And he was one of the older and greater Talmidim of Baal Shem Tov. What is very famous is that the first book of Chassidus that was printed was his Sefer. In other words, Baal Shem Tov said many Torahs. Everything was oral, nothing in writing from Baal Shem Tov. But the first time somebody actually put the Baal Shem Tov, not just in writing, but printed it, was the Tildes. The Tildes Yaakov Yosef. By the way, that's the reason the Misnagdim went wild. The first time Misnagdim went totally wild and put a chedim among Chassidim was when? Was the Tildes. Because that meant these people are serious. If they're serious enough to go and print the Sefer, yeah, that meant like, oh, these guys really mean business. Tildes. Tildes had a whole story. I was discarded. There was a Magid, called the Moichiach. The Moichiach from Polno, and he was discarded to the Baal Shem Tov. He got close to Baal Shem Tov, and he convinced the Rav of Polno, Rabbi Yaakov Yosef, he convinced them to go to Baal Shem Tov, to Mezhebush, and he became one of the greater Talmidim. So he wrote a sefer called the Tildes Yaakov Yosef, it's very famous. Later on, he wrote a different sefer called Ben Peiras Yosef. Ben Peiras Yosef. And there, he has a drasha for Shavuos, and he asks the same question we just mentioned. Was it actually done in love, or was it by force? And he explained, he says, Shomaiti, it's really cool to read it. It says, Shomaiti mi Rabbi. Like, he writes, I heard this from my Rebbe, meaning from Baal Shem Tov, Shomaiti mi Rabbi. And he writes that, he writes it on Drosha for Shavuos, because he said he heard this at the yard side of the Baal Shem Tov Shavuos, that's why he writes it then. He said he heard from Baal Shem Tov that when you serve Hashem, you have to serve Hashem in 2 ways. You have to have both of them. One of them is called Ahava, and the other one is called Yira. One is called Ahava, one is called Yira. Now, I must admit that most chassidim, especially among chassidim, we don't really feel comfortable talking about Yira, right? We usually Avo sounds so much, loving and caring and accepting. Avo always sounds much better. And that's usually the way that it's expressed. Usually the way, right? Usually we're all about love and all about. However, if you open Tanya, Perek Yamalim, so even though you have two things, but what's the Reshisa Aveda V'Yikora V'Sharsha? It doesn't sound as exciting as Avo and loving and unconditional love and so on and so forth, but you have to have Yira. And not just say you have to have Yira, but the foundation, the beginning of everything has to be Yira. You could decide as we talk about which type of Yira, we're talking about Yira Sachet, or Yira Sa'inish, or Yira Sa'revimus, but the fact of the matter is, you have to have Yira. My wife had a Zayda. His name was Ichke Gansberg. Ichke Gansberg was a chassid. And besides being a chassid, he was a character. Right? Did I say that right? He was a big character. And Ichke Gansberg once told me a story. He was very upset at me because after I got married to his granddaughter, I insisted on wasting my time and being in Krillel. Because he claimed you can't waste your time in Krillel, you have to bring Mashiach. He really meant it. He wasn't kidding. You have to bring Mashiach. You have to bring Mashiach. But you're sitting in books, waste of time. Bring Mashiach. But he was that type. He was always on the run. He was always doing stuff, projects and different stuff. Very, very interesting. Remember, he once walked into Krillel. I was newly married, a few weeks. And I go to Krillel, I'm sitting there, learning. And he walks into Krillel, and he starts screaming at me in the middle of in front of the hall. It was a big Krillel. What are you doing here? I said, I'm learning halacha. Halacha, waste of time. You have to bring Mashiach. You have to go out. He had a whole thing. He wanted me to be the executive director of Mahar Khan. He had a whole theory what I'm supposed to do in my life. And basically, you need a fundraiser. That was basically the bottom line. and I said to him, let me just finish my I'm not going to be here forever, but at least whatever. You have to bring Mashiach. There's hundreds of people out there waiting just for you. You have to go bring Mashiach. He runs to the Rosh Krillel in Crown Heights. Rabbi Heller. Anybody knows Rabbi Heller knows he's the exact opposite of this type of personality of walking around Krillel screaming, you're wasting your time. He goes to Rabbi Heller and says, please, I'm telling you, tell this person to stop wasting his time. You have to bring Mashiach. He really meant it. No, he wasn't kidding. He was that type. He was the type. He once stood up by the Rebbe's Farbrengen. After Chavches Nissen, after the Rebbe started speaking about the whole idea of Mashiach right now, started speaking, he got up by the Farbrengen, in the middle of Farbrengen, and he says, we have to cry and we have to scream and we have to shout that Mashiach has to come right now. He was that type. He got up on the table, whatever, and it was silent. The whole ceremony was silent, and the Rebbe says, we need a Rav. We need to get a Rav. Where's the Rav? So they pointed at Rabbi Marlo. So Rabbi Marlo's yeah. She says, we need a Rav to paskin on Shabbos. You can't cry. You have to paskin on Shabbos. You can't cry. So Rabbi Marlo gets up and mumbles something. The Rebbe says, no, it should be paskin clearly. Shabbos you don't cry. But the Rebbe the Rebbe went with him. In other words, he did some things. He established some kind of projects that till this day it's unbelievable. There's a very famous organization in Israel called Tzir Agudas Chabad that sends out shluchim. He established it. The thing called Reshet Yitzvot of all of the schools. He established it. I mean, these people sat there in some room in Kfar Chabad and had a vision, and sure enough, they made it happen. He established in Israel a camp called Gam Yisrael Camp in Israel. Day camps. He was unbelievable. He ran he ran a little bit wild, but. So every time he would make a statement, the statements were not so clear what he meant to say, but he had it all planned in advance. He had it all planned. Rabbi Heller, he knew the guy, so he he giggled, he smiled. So I'll take care of it, much because I'll take care of it. From that time, everybody knows Krillel. At least the past few years, Krillel has two entrances, right? Has one from Union, one from Kingston. Whenever I would see him coming up, I would I would escape. It never happened again. You make a mistake once. However, it's funny because his wife was the most normal person. His wife, Mrs. Gansberg, was the most normal. She's Gil Khan's sister. You understand? She was like the most moichin, normal, organized person, and he was like, ah, and he let her out. But the Rebbe went with him. But the Rebbe went with him. The Rebbe, when he had this idea of throwing pamphlets out of the that idea, he made brochures that Moshiach is about to come, and he flew with the airplane over the Catskills, and he flew the brochures out of the windows over the bungalow colonies. People should take. No, that was Avram Paris back in the Lamed. I'll tell you what the story was. He printed these things. He had a whole argument, him and Itche Springer. What could spend Moshiach Bar? Itche Springer held up putting big ads in the New York Times, and Itche Gansberg said it's a waste because nobody reads the New York Times anyways. He paid $25,000 for an ad, and nobody reads it. Itche had a better idea. We're going to print pamphlets or brochures, and we're going to fly with an airplane over the Catskills, and over every bungalow colony, in every camp, we're going to throw a bunch of flyers. So if somebody got a message from above, from heaven, he'll take it serious, and he's gonna do something about it. That was his idea. Now listen to this. Sounds like a wild idea. They told him you can't do it because the Rebbe won't agree to it. So he says, no problem, we'll ask the Rebbe. Okay, we'll ask the Rebbe. So he took three flyers, and he wrote to the Rebbe, this is my plan. I want to explain to the Rebbe what he's about to do. And the Rebbe gave this Elul Tov Shalom Aleph. The Rebbe sent them back. It should be back. Slocha Rabbi Muflado, Melech Basade, Asker al Tzion. And the Rebbe sent Asker al Tzion, and the Rebbe said that one pamphlet is going to take with him. He returned 2 brochures, 2 flyers. The Rebbe said, one I'm going to take with me to the aisle, and I'm sending you another 2. It should be a shtat. You should have an extra 2 to throw out. Okay? So that's like somebody goes wild, yeah, but he means it with an emphasis. The Rebbe's like with him, you know. The Rebbe's okay, like not just the Rebbe agreed or didn't agree. The Rebbe said, I'm with you. 1, I'm going to take to the aisle, and 2, I'm sending you 2. You should have an extra 2 to do it your way. You had to do it your way, and it made an unbelievable impact. But that was it. However, Itchke, one time they had a opening of a new shul in a school. In other words, they established a bunch of schools in Israel. They had a school they did in Rehovot. They had a school in Yafo. They had a school in Kfar Saba. They had a school in Tzfat. He was very hyper, so he would establish a school, keep it for a year or 2, and then he would leave for somebody else and go open another one. That's the way he would do it. Some of these schools are still around. Yafo, I think, is still up. Natzrat is for sure up. Kids are many. Tanakh betach, Tanakh kayam. Kids, a lot of these schools are still around. We're talking about 50, 60 years later. However, Itchke, they had a Chanukah Sabayis of a new shul in one of these schools, and everybody came to this Chanukah Sabayis. You know, everybody that felt important in the city, Rabbonim, Askanim. He gets up and he says, L'chaim, he was a principal. He says, L'chaim, I would like to wish that this shul should be empty from Torah and mitzvahs. So people like flipped. I want this place to be absolutely empty from Torah and mitzvahs. L'chaim. Everybody looked at him like, what's he talking about? He said, I'm going to explain. He says, there's once a story that Baal Shem Tov once came to a shul. And that this shul, they didn't act the way Chassidus expects you to act. So Baal Shem Tov says he can't come in. He said, why not? He said, the shul is too packed with Torah and mitzvahs. What does that mean? It's brought down in the Zohar. Tanim brings it up, quotes it, that every mitzvah has to have 2 wings to be able to fly up. 2 wings, yeah? The Gadfin, the Leilo. What are the Gadfin? The Gadfin are Avo, V'yiro, right? Avo, V'yiro. You have to have love, you have to have fear. And if you don't have those 2 wings, it doesn't go up. So Baal Shem Tov said the reason he can't go is because all the mitzvahs that are done, all the Torah that's learned, and all the mitzvahs that are done in this shul are not done together with Avo, V'yiro. And being that they're not done together with Avo V'yiro, they're not departing, they're not going up. So that's why the shul is so packed. So Itchke said, now you understand that this shul is established in a school. That this school goes in the followings or in the footsteps of the Rabbi, based on Chassidus. So I'm sure that every Torah and mitzvah that will be done in this shul will be going up. That's where it's always going to be empty from Torah and mitzvahs. Okay, that's it. But the fact of the matter is that any mitzvah you do has to have a lot of ava, has to have love. But it's not just enough to have love, it also has to have yiro. What's yiro? Yiro could be fear. But yiro, really, what does yiro mean? Yiro means boundaries. Yiro means that you have boundaries, not just that you have unlimited love. Because unlimited love, that's why we don't really love, when we talk about doing mitzvahs, we always love saying, let's do mitzvahs out of ava, not yiro. You know why? Because yiro takes away from our independence. there's a certain type of commitment when it comes to yiro. Ava, you just do whatever you do, whatever you do, whenever you do, however you do. We love you just the way you are, right? There's really not a lot of commitment there. Yiro means it has to be within a boundary. It has to be in a certain time, in a certain place, under a certain circumstance. It's not just enough to have ava. Ava is great. No, ava doesn't work. But ava, if it's not based on yiro, it doesn't really keep. It not just doesn't work. It doesn't preserve. It doesn't pick up. And just like when you have a bird, the bird can't have one wing. It has to have both wings. You have to have ava and you have to have yiro. I remember I once heard a story. I had a relative that had his better days. So he had better days in yeshiva, and then he went on a search. You know, a lot of these teenagers go on a journey. So his journey, throughout whatever he was going, he ended off in the village in New York, and not just himself, with a bunch of chevre, and they were there. And obviously, it's not a very appropriate place for bachrim. And if I'm not mistaken, it was, I think, yeah, he told me it was even Friday night. But they Farbrengen. We're sitting there, a bunch of boys. And right next to them was a group of boys that came from a non-Lubavitcher background. You can imagine, they're both not very careful about Rabbi Tom's feeling that morning, yeah? But I'm saying, there's one group of Lubavitchers and one group of non-Lubavitchers, or so-called anti-Lubavitchers, okay? Misnagdim. And they're both in the same place, sitting in the same bar, drinking. That's what they're doing. And Pitom, the non-Lubavitchers, started speaking up against Lubavitch and against the Rebbe. Said, you're talking against our Rebbe? And they started such a fight there that both sides got arrested. And they're sitting there in front of the investigator and the police. And the investigator says, what was the reason that you started this whole thing? So he tells the investigator, you kidding? He made fun of my Rebbe? He made fun of my belief, of my Rebbe? Then he realized that he's speaking Narishkeit, because the way he was behaving or acting, or the place he wasn't really making his Rebbe so proud. So many years later, when he, Baruch Hashem, he came back, he went on a journey, and he ended up becoming, Baruch Hashem, today he's married, he's on shluchas, he has 7 kids. But we were speaking about this one night, we were talking about this interesting story, interesting incident that happened. So he tells me the investigator probably thought I'm nuts. Who am I speaking about? Lubavitch and Rebbe? Not an appropriate place, not appropriate time, not appropriate behavior. And then he said, I realized that I never lost my love to Lubavitch, to the Eibishter, to the Rebbe. I never lost my love. You know what the problem was? I didn't have yiro. There were no boundaries. So the love came out. It was a real love. It wasn't a joke. It was a real love that came from inside. But you know what was missing? That it wasn't limited. There were no boundaries. So it could be the wrong place and the wrong time and the wrong environment. But the love was a real love, though. What's the problem with such a love? You only have ava, you don't have yiro. So when you take off, the bird takes off like very crooked. It doesn't really work. You have to have both things. You have to have ava and you have to have yiro. Maybe some hop a little bit, yeah. Hop a little bit. Huh? But what's the bottom line? Says the Tildes. He says in a sefer called Ben Peras Yosef, he says the reason that the Eibishter put the mountain on top of them, because he wanted that accepting the Torah shouldn't just be in a loving way, it should also have the yiro element in it. It shouldn't just be avo. It should be a commitment, it should be yiro, it should be boundaries. That's why he did kofa alem har kigis. That's an interesting point. But I still think that both these points, the Maharal's point we said before about forcing, and also the Tildes, they don't explain it as well. And they explain it very well. What am I to do grades, I think. But the Rebbe, Shvuas Tov Shin Chai, gave a whole different perspective. This we connect with Beis Tammuz very strongly. sure many people here are familiar with Professor Green. Remember the Professor Green? Huh? So Professor Green, I was in Yeshiva, he came to speak to us. It was lots of fun to listen to. And the best time, if you ever heard Professor Green speaking, it was him with Rabbi Feller. Whenever they would Farbrengen together, that was like the best. That was like the best show in town.
He came to teach at the center.
Oh, really? Himself or with Rabbi Feller? Himself. You know, today in Beersheba, I was recently in Beersheba, there's a big park in his memory. Park Professor Green. Very interesting, huh? So he once told us a story, him and Rabbi Feller. There are all kinds of funny things because he says a story from his angle, Rabbi Feller says it from his angle, yeah? Like he says, Rabbi Feller told me it's about time to start growing my beard. So he said, what kind of beard? He said, a Jewish beard. What's a Jewish beard? A Jewish beard is a beard you don't mess around with. Yeah, all kinds of interesting. They both had like an interesting talk between them. However, was he clear? Like when he spoke in Hashem, like people like really got his ideas?
So it was when he first came. Rabbi told him, you know, can't just go to Israel and stop doing slaves, but he didn't speak any Hebrew.
Yeah.
There wasn't much choice about it.
So I sent.
There was work happening from Beersheba.
People liked it? Like people liked it because
Yeah, we talk about not so working, not so.
oh really? So that's probably interesting, huh? So he wants
whatever, there's his voice that comes out of the box. It tells him what to do, you know, turn this way, and that way, and they don't say, is there really somebody there? So it's reason, and they know, they do it.
Cool. Very cool. So we once told us a story, him and Rabbi Feller together. This was a really cool story. The story went like this. He started becoming a little bit more observant, but it was a very long process. It really took a really long time. The famous story the Rebbe himself said about that that he came to have the first meeting with them and he stopped Mincha, Rabbi Feller. But it was a very, very long process. However, he was supposed to go to a conference, Professor Green, and Rabbi Feller felt, why? He came over to him and he said, listen, do you mind, when you fly, you'll be flying business class. You know, he's not paying for it, NASA's paying for it. And you're flying with a bunch of scientists and very smart people. How about when you fly, you should order a kosher meal. It's going to make a very big, you know, when you come there and the stewardess comes and says, oh, here's your kosher meal. Everybody around will, you know, create like some kind of a discussion and talk. And I guess Rabbi Feller felt that it's also good for him himself, you know, like to come out with a statement that he's going kosher. So Professor Green said, great, I'll order kosher. Rabbi, you say, I'm in. He liked the idea. So he orders a kosher meal. And that day, he said he was very, very busy. Nebuch didn't have what to eat, but he knew at night there'll be a kosher meal on the flight. So he counted on this meal very, very much. And they take off. And when they took off, there was, from where he was, there was a first flight to Chicago, and then from Chicago he continued to wherever he was supposed to fly. So he's like tired, very tired, middle of the night, starving. And the stewardess comes, and she starts giving out the meals, and his meal never showed up. His meal never showed up. And he was like a little bit upset, so he says to her, excuse me, you know about my meal? She says, you're the only one in this flight to order a kosher meal, right? He says, yeah, kosher meal. She says, well, being that it's only one meal, the last minute, we forgot to order the meal, there's no meal for you. So he starts, he was a character. He starts making, he said, they start making me sheberachs, Rabbi Feller. I was so stupid for falling into this idea. How did I give into this commitment, eating kosher? Who cares about kosher? He asked her, is there anything else to eat? She says, no, sir, it's already the end of the flight. And he's hungry, and he's upset, and he's tired, and he's aggravated. How did I give in? He was so... He lands in Chicago, and the first thing he's looking for is a payphone. He's going to get Rabbi Feller. And and he looks for a payphone. When he gets the payphone, he calls. I didn't have enough coins, enough quarters. So he says, he calls collect, and he says, on collect, says, tell the rabbi this is an emergency. It's an emergency. Okay, so Rabbi Feller, this is Rabbi Feller's side. Rabbi Feller says it's 12:37 at night. So they see the alarm clock, 12:37, and the phone is ringing again and again and again. And he picks up the phone and says, Rabbi, there's a collect phone call, emergency call from Professor Green. Sure, give me the phone. He allows the call, and Professor Green starts pouring out his kishkas about him and his ideas, and you were stupid, and my idea was stupid, I had to give in, and I'm hungry, and I'm starving, and I'm there, and he keeps going on and on and on. The fellow doesn't even have a second to answer. He says, and now let me tell you something. Right across the place where I am right now with the payphone, there's a hot dog stand. And I'm going to get not one hot dog, and I'm going to get 3 hot dogs. One for you, and one for me, and one for the Eibishter. This is my way to get you back. I'm telling you, Rabbi. Okay. And he keeps going on and on and on. And then Rabbi Feller stops. And Rabbi Feller says, oh, okay, Professor. I got your point. Let me just tell you one thing. You do whatever you do. But it's been many months that we're trying to discuss between ourselves what's Judaism all about. What's the secret of Judaism? What is it? Is it a religion, nationality? Well, what is it? It's just a matter of culture. Well, what is it? We never got to a clear answer. So you know what? At this moment, I'll be telling you the big secret of what's the essence of Judaism. Here we go. It could be 12:37 at night. You're starving after a whole day of work and no food. And after a flight, you're hungry and you're upset. And right across the hallway, or the terminal, wherever you are, there's a hot dog stand. And you decide that you're not going to give in, and you will still stay kosher. For the sake of Hashem, that's what Judaism is all about. And all the rest is commentary. Have a good night and a great journey, and he slams the phone on him. So Professor Green gets so upset. He gets so upset. He stands online and he's already planning which hot dog is he going to dedicate to who. The one with the mustard is for Rabbi Feller, and the one with the ketchup is for he has it all calculated. And he's standing there online, and it comes to the stand, and when it comes to the stand, he tells us, the person standing there says, yes, sir, what can I give you? And he turns around, and he falls asleep on a bench. To wait. He says, and I woke up a total different person. So the rabbi was right. I woke up a total different person. What a story. You know why? Huh? Total different person. And he said, I understood from that. Unbelievable story. It's only how he understood it, how I felt how to say. I understood what the essence of Judaism is. And the essence is that if you really want to be serious about something, especially by Yiddishkeit, you have to give yourself over. You have to give something from yourself. It has to be a self-sacrifice. There has to be a real commitment. There has to be that you actually do an action for the sake of Yiddishkeit, for the sake of Hashem. Anything else till then could be beautiful, could be holy, could be spiritual, could be meaningful, could be exciting, could be everything. But if there's no real self-sacrifice, if there's no real commitment that's really connected to that, then it won't hold. It could be a nice memory. It could be a lot of good stuff. It has to be that somebody is actually willing to put himself on the line and say, here I am doing something for Hashem's sake. Says the Rebbe Shavuos Tov Shin Chai, that's when it was Kofa Alem Har Kegigis. Kofa Alem Har Kegigis means they should put the mountain on top of them and say, listen up. Yiddishkeit is not just being caring and not just being loving. And Yiddishkeit is not just saying the idea Not to say the idea, oh, nasiv and nishma, unconditional love, it's all good, it's all true. But when do I know you're really part of this? When do I know you're really part of it? When you're really willing to give yourself over to it. Is it everything or nothing? That's what it's all about. And that's called in very simple words, Mesiras Nefesh. That was the idea of Kol HaMamki. The Rebbe spoke about it. Very, very interesting how the Rebbe, that Mesiras Nefesh means you give yourself over. Anything else, if there's no real self-sacrifice, could really be a nice, beautiful thing. Exciting, emotional, everything you want, intellectual, but it's not real. When does it become real? When you're willing to give everything you have towards it. And the Rebbe says, Yud Beis Tammuz is a Yom Tov of Mesiras Nefesh. It's a Yom Tov, just like Avram Avinu paved the road for us, for Mesiras Nefesh. Just like he opened the channel for Mesiras Nefesh. In that same exact way, says the Rebbe, Yud Beis Tammuz is a Yom Tov that the previous Rebbe prepared for us, paved for us, opened the channel that we should be willing to go for everything for Mesiras Nefesh. Everything Mesiras Nefesh. And that was the real nekuda that happened in Yud Beis Tammuz. The previous Rebbe comes to jail, and before jail, there was a famous story. The previous Rebbe gathered 9 chassidim, and they made a neder al das Rabbi. You have 10 people, and you make some kind of an oath. But it's with 10 people around. It's a very, very powerful one. And the previous Rebbe said, "There's such a darkness coming upon us, such a darkness that the only way we could really break through this darkness, only way we could do it, is by what? Is saying we're going to go Mesiras Nefesh. Give up everything we have, for the sake of bringing some light into the darkness." And the previous Rebbe said that usually when a Rebbe sends you on a mission, he takes it upon himself, puts it on his own shoulders, and says, "It'll be okay, you're with me." And the previous Rebbe told his chassidim, in this specific situation, I can't even promise you that we're all going to make it. And I think the previous Rebbe spoke about himself also. I can't promise you. And there are major chassidim sitting there that, in fact, a big part of them didn't make it through. The Raskin brothers, Cholim Morozov, Shmuel Nemoitin. No, Rav Nana's made it. Rabbi, Yerina Poltaver, Yerina Khan, there were chassidim out there, and among this group, and I don't promise. But you know what? Maybe they didn't make it through, but Yiddishkeit did. They broke the thing. Why? They're in Mesiras Nefesh. Mesiras Nefesh doesn't really mean that. Mashpia always says the story that a bunch of bachim. One story about had this thing. They would come every night to Farbrengen, very excited. They'll open our Kodesh. They'll promise they're going to give their lives over for the Rebbe. They want to die for the Rebbe. Mashpia told me afterwards. He says these people ended up becoming very nice people, businessmen, keeping Shabbos kosher, but none of them you could really say. I'm sure they also do some shlichus, but none of them could really say that they're really actually out there, like on the shlichus. So afterwards, he was thinking about it, like in no way, like in no. He always told us that the reason was because we're all willing to die for the Rebbe and all we would give their lives over, but nobody was willing to live just to live for the Rebbe. It never doesn't necessarily mean you have to die for it. You can live for it. Sometimes living for it is much harder than dying for it. But that's the idea of Kol HaMamki. The Yiddishkeit in the end, we have many good ideas. But in the end, it's either I'm willing to give everything for it, and that's the moment or not. I once heard, everybody's familiar with Rabbi Khan, right? Sure, yeah? Who? Rabbi Khan. Everybody's familiar. Rabbi Khan, I once heard the story from his sister, that when he learned in yeshiva in Tel Aviv, 1940s. The yeshiva, Lubavitch yeshiva called Achit Min. And it was big Mesiras Nefesh to keep a yeshiva in Tel Aviv, 1940s. Yeshiva. Many interesting people came out of that yeshiva. A big mashpia called Chaim Shel Brook. But he was a mashpia, in like a Chassidish part. But the Gemara part, the Nigla part, the Halacha part was a Rav called Reb David Pobarsky. Reb David Pobarsky later on became the Rosh Yeshiva Ponovich, the Ponovich Yeshiva. So before he was the Rosh Yeshiva Ponovich, he was the Rosh Yeshiva of Lubavitch in Tel Aviv. He looked for a Rosh Yeshiva and knows a lot of Gemara, whatever, Yirei Shamayim, and he was Reb David. So Reb David Pobarsky was his Rosh Yeshiva. 45, 46, came to Bnei Brak, the Ponovich Rav, called Rabbi Kahneman. He was the Rav of the city of Ponovich, back in Lithuania. Nebuch, he lost his whole family, he lost his whole community in the Holocaust. He survived, moved to Israel, and decided to commemorate his communion, his family. He has to open and establish a yeshiva called the Ponovich Yeshiva. Today it's a well-known yeshiva, very big. Back then he was started with 6 bachrim. Well, he needed a bachrim. So where's he needed a Rosh Yeshiva, he needed a bachrim. So he was like the president. He needed somebody to be the Magichir, the Rosh Yeshiva. He had a friend back from Lithuania called Reb David Pobarsky. But Reb David was the Rosh Yeshiva in Lubavitch. So he went over to Reb David and said, do you mind becoming the Rosh Yeshiva in Bnei Brak? Reb David agreed. I guess he felt more comfortable anyways, working with the Lithuanian Jews and the Lubavitchers. No problem. No, I'm saying it wasn't another thing. But if David needed a bachrim, he couldn't just go to open issue without bachrim. So he was thinking among the Lubavitch Yeshiva, who could he take, draft to his yeshiva, to the Ponovich Yeshiva, who was one of the greatest heads, Rabbi Khan. Then he was a bacher, he was 18. So he goes over to Rabbi's father. Rabbi's father was a big chassid called Rabbi Khan. So he goes over. She said she remembers she was there in the apartment when it happened. She was in the other room. And Pitom, Reb David comes to the house. It's a complete covered, the Shiva came to the house. So Reb David walks into the house. And he asks Reb Fala if they could have a meeting. And Reb Fala says, they sit down. And Reb David says, I would like, please, Rabbi, I'm opening a yeshiva, Ponovich Yeshiva, and I would like Yael to come with me to be one of my Talmidim. So Reb Fala said, there's nothing to talk about. Nothing to talk about. So he says, Reb David, she said he got emotional. He says, I'm begging you, Chaval, Kosher Hashan, such a good head. We shouldn't get wasted. I'll bring him, I'll make him, a big God ladder. So he says, there's nothing to talk about. So he tries to convince another time. Now she remembers the name. She didn't know Bishas Maiz what the name was. He says, I will make him the Rabbi Akiva Iger of the next generation. Here's a great, unbelievable scholar that he says, I'm going to make him the Rabbi Akiva Iger of the next generation. He's like trying to. And she remembers that her father was very edel. Edel Yid. Very polite to the Rosh Yeshiva. He gave a bang on the table. And he said, Lo yakum v'lo yir. Never going to happen. He said, I remember back in Russia, all the Go'inim, and all the Talmidei Chachamim, and all the Lamdonim. Nobody survived. No one survived. Between the communism and between the socialism and the Zionism, nobody survived. The only ones survived were the ones that had Chassidus. Those are the only ones, because the ones who give everything up. I don't need a Rabbi Akiva, I don't need a God Ladder. I need my son to be a Yirei Shamayim. That's all I want. And he burst out in tears. The Rabbi David understood that he has no. He said there's nothing to talk about. He walked out. Later on, I heard from the Rosh Yeshiva in Chassidim. He also learned in that yeshiva, Reb David Man. Later on, Reb David Man told me that Reb David went back to yeshiva. Reb David Pobarsky. He was crying at night. And he quoted a pasuk in Eicha, Shetipachti v'ramamti. He was like very, very upset about it. Very upset. But Reb Fala, he had major respect and major derech eretz to Reb David Pobarsky. He really did. But he said, I know that if I want my son to overcome the hardships, and there were major hardships, 1940s in Israel were big hardships. He should have Avo Yiro, and he should have the ability of giving himself over. And to give yourself over, you have to have Mesiras Nefesh. That's it. That's it. Then he wrote to the previous Rebbe, he's begging the previous Rebbe, please to send him a green card and affidavit to send him, because if he stays here, he'll become the Goldfarb there, get him out of it. That's the story. That's how he went to New York. That's how he went to New York. And he came to New York. It's the whole story. He came to New York. He came to New York 3 weeks too late because he left on the boat on Yudal Shvat, and he came. But the whole story. He told the Rebbe he wants to go back, and our Rebbe said, "Stay here. We'll find what to do with you." And he ended up staying. But the fact of the matter was that this feeling of Mesiras Nefesh, of the willing to give everything up, that is a kofa lemartigiyus. That's the essence. That's the nekudah. And all the rest is commentary. It's very important. Very good. Very, very good. The people should be lamdanim. And shmatz, everything is important. But in the end, if it's someone that lives and goes with this method of giving yourself over, is everything I'm willing to give up for this thing, then you know that it's real. It's a real commitment. Anything else is nice, is beautiful, but not necessarily it's going to be an everlasting thing. It has to be a nice Nefesh, willing to go for everything. That's the nekudah of Yud Beis Tammuz. Yud Beis Tammuz is a nekudah that the previous Rebbe paved the road for us to be willing to do everything we could. Everything we could. And what are they asking from us? They're not asking us to give our lives over, and not to get arrested, and not to sit in jail, and not, just to do one good action, but to do it adasot, to do it the whole way. To give her in that specific thing, to do it all the way. To do it with the ability that we have. And it's so easy. It's so easy because it's all paved already.
I think I missed something.
Wait.
They hold the left arm over the head to the secretary. So,
either you go for it all the way, you give us the ability of doing everything. In other words, he puts it over and says, listen up. Yiddishkeit is not like, halfway, quarter of the way. Either you go all the way on it, or not. That's what it's all about.
I mean, I can understand you saying if you don't do the Torah, I'm going to drop it on your head. And you say, no, I'm doing the Torah anyway.
Oh, when they said I'm willing, I think, when they said we're willing to accept the Torah, they're willing to go all the way on it. All the way. Whatever I had to do, I think that's it's an amazing sicha. The Rabbi explains it in such a way that, מלשון כיף. אבל אין מקרא יוצא מדי פשוטו. פה תהיה גבורתכם, זה פה תהיה גבורתכם. What is it? Well, the man with the Khateva, that was the idea.
I put my life many times in danger to get to meetings in America. Before I almost got blown up by terrorists, and you're telling me I'm going to share his message.
Great. So you're in with us.
I'm not telling you I'm anybody special, okay? But I understand what you're talking about. God forbid anyone in a situation. Well, we should dance. That's my message to everybody. Not just to say it's not enough.
Let's go, people. Jump, baby.
Whatever you tell me. Here. יש מישהו בזל? יש לי מחר בבוקר לפסור שיעור בתערובס ואיבדתי את הספר של תערובס של סמור. עכשיו יש לי שולחן ערוך החדש, אני לא יודע ללמוד בו, אני לא יודע, אתה יודע, אני לא יודע... כן, לא, מסתגע.
יכול להיות יש למטה פה, נו.
כן, לא, פה לא היה, חיפשתי.
אולי זה בערונות הסגורים.
אלי אתה. תן לי תערוץ, אני מאוד אשמח.
רוצה תערוץ, שולחן ערוך חדש?
לא. רגיל, נו. עכשיו, יש לי את הסט החדש, שולחן ערוך, ממש שווה,
מאוד בנפרד.
לא, אני מחפש את מה שאמרתי.
חשבתי עם הפירושים שלך.
מחר שיעור, רציתי להביא לך צדיק הזה, אני לא מצליח למצוא את הידיים ואת הרגליים. אתה יודע מה זה מזכיר לי? שהיינו, כשנבחנו לסמיכם, הלכתי לרב אשכנזי, והרב אשכנזי, הבאנו את השולחן ערוך שהיה לנו, והוא לא הצליח למצוא את הידיים ואת הרגליים, הוא היה צריך את המהדורה הישנה. כל אחד עם הדור ודפוסיו.
אחת הסיבות שלא, אמרו לנו לא ללמוד בתוך שתיים. אמרו לנו, אתה תשמור בצורה תודה, ככה אנשים. היה עוד דבר,
הלאה.
חבר טוב של השם שלך נמצא בצפת היום.
מי? ליבו פה? איפה הוא? נחמן? איפה הוא?
בצפת, אני אקח את זה נחמן. היום יש חתונה, לא?
שמי? החתונה פה? שתי שפיר, זה נחמן וליבו. כן, שני חברים טובים ככה.
נחמן היה הרבה שנים, לא נראה לי בבשר, נחמן נשאר בבית.
תאיר עדיין חתן נכדה בשצקי? ליפשוס ומחתן? ליפשוס מחתן? הנכדה של בשצקי? Even so, all the above connects. Parshas Balak. Usually, you can speak about the Parsha until Tuesday and then continue on. I'm going to tell you an interesting story. I have an issue. I have a boy from Farbrengen that his parents were relocated, right? That's what it's called today? Relocated to California. A few years. His parents decided that for his bar mitzvah they have to come back to Israel for the whole family. So they went to the local shliach there. No names come over. And they said, in this date we're going to be in Israel. We're going to have an aliyah. And to prepare our son. So the shliach went out of his way and for 5 months prepared the son. Did a great job. Last Thursday, they just arrived. They arrived a few days before. They said they're coming to town. So the kid, come to shul and with me have a whole rehearsal on the dinner. Come to the dinner, and the kid whips out the papers that he got from the shliach, and he was well prepared for Parshas Balak. Now the problem is that it's happening this Shabbos, meaning the shliach soll gesund sein. Prepared him according to his calendar. And according to his calendar in America, this Shabbos they're leading Balak, and we're leading Pinchas. So this kid, that's a sweet kid, but I'm trying to figure out what am I going to do. That is,
Maybe he can do both.
huh? He's Chayv Balak, but first of all, it's not Chayv, a Yochid, it's Tzemach. Second of all,
You're talking about a drasha or
I'm talking after the kid's leading after huh? And the fact that he's Chayv, in fact, this guy the balak, he could do whatever he wants, but go explain to the shul why they're leading last week's after, that's like so I'm gonna stick in trouble. But besides, besides all that, and then I found I think a stickle solution because our shul the minyan starts very early, 8:00. Now the parents told me that about 8:00 is way too early for them. Do I mind if they're going to have another minyan at 11:00? This was their offer, not mine. Do 11:00 because some friend of theirs told them that they once they did that class, whatever. Could they do an 11:00 minyan? Only the family and close friends. So the minute they said that, I said, "Oops, this is a way to get out of it." Only family. How much is family? So there's 3 sons, and the father. It's already 4. 34. I need to get 2 more that didn't hear last week's parsha. For everything, it's not so hard to find 6 people that didn't hear last week's parsha. We'll try to find. So either we'll do that or have a different solution. Keep that to this way or another. We have to figure it out. I could do is either late Balak because people didn't hear Balak last week. I could do is I can learn Pinchas. Kid will say the brachas. I'll learn the after of Pinchas and I'll learn after of Balak. Why not? We'll find some kind of a solution. Poor kids, he prepared for 5 months. And then he's learning the wrong after. So the kids are Balak. So there's one thing that's very hard to understand about Balak. And Balak was no joker. I mean, he was a Navi. Right? It says, "Leikom bi Yisrael Navi k'Moshe." Right? It says, "Bi Yisrael leikom u'Moshe leikom." Who's that? Balak. Balak was a real. Bilam. Was a real Navi. Your dad Das Elyon. Pharaoh said your dad Das Elyon. It's not a joke. How could it be that someone like him went so low? First of all, low by his havamina of cursing out Jewish people. Like, what do you think? You don't know? If you're dad Das Elyon, you don't know that Bonim Atem Hashem Keichem. You don't know that the Yidden are Eivishter's children. Second question is, in the end, it didn't work out with the clothes. So what kind of eitzah does it give? Bnei Smoyov. What's wrong with him? That's not a very interesting explanation.
And how is it that Shlomo could still speak with him?
Yeah, I think that's it more.
I don't understand the age.
You're not the only one that understands ages. Good company. But, but it's not so clear. In the beginning, he tells him, do whatever you want. Then he can go. Cloud, Parshas Balak, we came to the conclusion last week when we sat in Shlomo and spoke about it, that every detail he could explain individually, when you look at the whole Parsha, it really makes, it's really hard to understand what's happening there. The kid said, somebody showed to me, brought down in the Sfarim, brought down in many Sfarim, that Bilam and Amalek connect. The famous thing that you have, if you write Amalek and you write Bilam, so if you go half and half, it always works. In other words,
The last 2 letters.
the last 2 are the last. Yeah, it works 2 and 2.
First 2 letters.
In other words, you write.
The last 2 letters.
Yeah, and it's really going to work, and it works. In other words, both ways, right? So you write Bilam, right? Bilam, Beis Lamed Ayin Mem. Then you write Amalek. So if you write Bilam, Beis Lamed, it goes Ayin Mem, Bilam, and it goes the other way, Ayin Mem, Lamed Kuf. It really, and Amalek and Bilam, they have the same idea. Even though it's not really explained so much, specifically the idea how Bilam managed to do it, being that we find a connection between Bilam and Amalek, if we understand Amalek, we may understand also Bilam that way. What's the problem with Amalek? Amalek brought down a Siddur, comes from the word Umolak Esroishe. Molak is disconnect the head from the body. Umolak Esroishe, that's the idea of Amalek. You understand great things, and then instead of it coming down the Maisa, there's something, it's called the boundary of the neck, in the body, or there's some kind of boundary, or it's called Leitzanus, make a joke out of it, you laugh at it, and you disconnect the understanding to the action. And the way Amalek was also great. Think about it. It's brought down Yerushalmi. When it says Bechar Lonu Anoshim, so you know that Amalek knew how to see the mazel of every single individual. Able to see exactly what's going on. Very similar to Bilam, your dad telling. They knew what's happening in the spiritual world. So Amalek, even though he understands so deep and so great, he's able to do these awful things. The Shekar Chabadar to cool down Am Yisrael. Just like Bilam in that way. And I think the same clipper is what we spoke about before. Somebody has a great understanding, but then when it comes down to Meister Apel, he says, okay, so you understand everything, you're so great, amazing, deep, but how do we apply it? And any type of understanding that a person has to come down to the Apel knowledge. How do you apply it, and what are you willing to give in order to apply it? Are you willing to give everything you have at this moment? Your time, your efforts, intellect, your emotions. What are you willing to do for it? Somebody sits down and understands the deepest understandings. And he comes to the greatest conclusions. Nifla, great. What are you willing to do about it? And if somebody really does something about it, then it really shows that his bind, his connection to the Eibush is real. And if not, then it's great. It's just not essential. I saw a story I told my kids this week. There was, in the city of Prague, there was a very rich individual, and he had one daughter, and he was looking for a chassan. And sure enough, he found a great chassan, because he thought he was great at the time. Gave him a lot of, he used to give them beautiful, fancy wedding, and a very, very short time after the wedding, the dear chassan disappeared off planet Earth. Nobody knew where he was. For a while, it doesn't say how long, it was a long time. He was married for a very short time and he disappeared for a very long time. A few years passed. And one day, shows up to the city of Prague, an individual, and he walks in and he says, hello, I am the lost husband. Lost husband. He looked very different. But he said, all the years passed. Lost his hair, changed the color. He was looking a little bit. But he claimed he's the person. He says, I'm Mr. Chassan. So he goes to meet his in-laws. And he knows everything. They test him, they talk to him, he knows, He meets his former wife, or his wife, he's really legally his wife, and he shares with her information that only him and her could know. Nobody else. They're married for a very short period of time, but they had some kind of information. And he knows it's him. Something deep inside told her, for some reason, it's not him. On one hand, he knows everything, and he's bringing witnesses and proofs. On the other hand, something missing. The Rav of Prague at that time was called Rabbi Cheskel Landa, known as the Noida Yehuda, Cheskel Yehuda Landa, Sega Landa, called the Noida Yehuda. He was great going. He came to consult with him. What should we do? On one hand, every test we passed, every test he had to come across, he passed very nicely. On the other hand, something tells us that it's not him. It's Kulanu. Shama Tova.
הרבי תמיד להגיד בקרוב ממש, בקרוב ממש. מה זה בקרוב ממש? משיח יבוא בקרוב ממש, נכון?
ברור.
מה זה ממש? חשבת פעם על האותיות האלה, ממש. מנחם מנדל שניאורסון, מ"מ שם, בקרוב ממש. משיח יבוא בקרוב ממש. מי יבוא בקרוב ממש? מנחם מנדל שניאורסון. אחי המלך. אני מברך אתכם, תודה שחיכיתם אותי.
So we came to the Neighbor Yehuda. The Neighbor Yehuda had a great idea. It says, come to shul. You come to shul Friday night, tell your son-in-law. Right when you come to shul, he says, I need to be excused for 5 minutes. In the meantime, go sit by our place. And you'll see what will happen. And the Neighbor Yehuda was waiting to see what's going to happen. Sure enough, he goes, enters the shul, and he tells his son-in-law, oh, I have to be excused for 2 minutes. Go to our place and sit there and wait for me. And the guy had no idea what he's supposed to do. Busted. So they had a bunch of people like ambushing. They chopped him and they had very interesting ways of how to get out information from him. Sure enough, he cracked and he said the stories like this. I was somewhere, wandering somewhere. Somebody came over to me and said, listen, if you pay me a big amount of money, I'll tell you a secret that'll be worth a lot of money for you. What's the secret? The secret is I used to be married to a very rich girl. And I disappeared on her. And they're probably all looking for me. So I'll give you all the information I have about the family and about the background, about her, and everything I'll tell you. Now you'll go there. If she forgives you, you'll be married to a very rich family. If she doesn't forgive you, she'll want to get. You'll charge her money. So you'll make money this way or another. He said he sat day and night and he taught me every little piece of information. The guy was well trained and he really knew his stuff. But he forgot to tell him about this detail where they're supposed to sit in shul. Afterwards, he came to the Neighbor Yehuda and asked the Neighbor Yehuda, how did you come up with such a great idea? He said, Neighbor Yehuda said like this. Someone that's willing to go so low, from the Eishasish, living with a different man, that's like really bad. Someone that is so put in this like schmutz, this honorable, respectful position, how could he think about a little detail of such a pure thing like a place in shul? Like his place in shul, like his regular place in shul. He remembers everything around it, but it's all schmutz, it's all like dirty, it's all like not pure. But if it's so put into this impure situation, how is it going to be able to boil down to such a beautiful, pure point like your set place in shul? It's brilliant. I think in a way that's a mistake of Bilam. That's the thing. Your dad selling and everything is good. When you have that problem of Amalek, you have that problem that you don't know how to in the end translate it down to Pel Mamish, there's a lack. And this lack could bring people to different crazy places. Like the Falei Khan said, I knew them, they were all going, they all were big lamdanim and everything. But they only missed that one thing called Mesiras Nefesh, the ability of connecting the greatest understandings. The ability of connecting it down to Pel Mamish. Where's that boundary? Either there's Yeshish, there's Amalek, there's Kalkite, coldness, or there's the will of giving yourself over, of doing something that's beyond what you want to do. Dead tired at night, after a whole day, and you're willing to say Shema, it's called Mesiras Nefesh. Amalek tells you, let's say you could afford a day off, had such a hard day, never. What do you think? You say Shema without a jacket, without a garment, without nothing wrong. That's Mesiras Nefesh. I know it sounds like very it's nothing like sitting in jail for 2 months or 3 months or not even for one day. But it's Mesiras Nefesh means you give yourself over. So at this specific moment, I'm willing to give myself over. I'm giving from what I want to do. What I want to do right now is go to sleep. And I'm willing right before to take just 5 minutes and say Shema like a Yid. That's called Mesiras Nefesh. Amalek tries to take me over, tries to cool me down. Balak is trying to disconnect me on this journey of going to Eretz Yisrael, to the Promised Land. And I'm willing to do it. And where does Mesiras Nefesh really come in? Mesiras Nefesh comes in these little small details. Where's my set place in Shul? That's Mesiras Nefesh. Knowing everything around, he had it all figured out. He was really good, apparently. The night that he went to write to the Shul, he says, the guy was good. He says, he knew everything, he knew every single thing. He says, the dvarim hamuchmanim, the hidden stuff he knew everything. He didn't know where his place was in Shul. I think in Beis Tammuz, at this time, that we could and should and must try it for ourselves. And I think sometimes these little details, are like very hard to keep. Very hard to keep. And the long journey starts with one step, one little thing. Somebody gives in to the right thing, Mesiras Nefesh, in little details, so then he gets the greater ones. Your dad selling, but there's no lack in between. He's willing to really kofan hakli. He's willing to give everything he has for this specific thing. That's called kofan hakigigis. So l'chaim, it's Yom Tov Mesiras Nefesh. It's Yom Tov that we could, and we should do whatever we could. Mitzvah Hashem, start with little details, but it has to be Pel Mamish. It has to be something with Pel Mamish. And if you do this Pel Mamish, once we had in our town, we had a Bar Mitzvah club. And for some reason, one year I wasn't part of it. I was told, for a good reason. One year, the Bar Mitzvah club, I gave it over to somebody else. There wasn't Lubavitch. He tried his best, really tried his best. And at the end of the year, we had a talk. So they invited me to the end ceremony, because the rabbi, but I wasn't really involved in it. Afterwards, it finished. He said, I felt that something wasn't clicking. Something that every other year happens and this year doesn't. Then I'll tell you what the trick is. The trick is every time we finished a class in Bar Mitzvah Club, it's usually like 12 or 14 classes, we always gave the kids a mission what to do at home. Okay, we made a pushka with them, so we gave them a pile of coins, and every morning they should put stuff. Yeah, we made a mezuzah with them, so we made beautiful mezuzah things that they should take the whole family and gather around and put a new mezuzah up on the door. But every time there was always a mission, something to do. So every time that they learned about something, they translated it to Ma'aseh Pel. So it influenced them, influenced the family, influenced the environment. They did something about it. They did something about it. So Mela, at the end of the year, you turned around 12, 14 meetings together with all the actions they did. They really changed. And the 1 year they did was a great year. The guy really gave his heart and soul to it. I have no kindness, and it was a year I wasn't able to because of other reasons. So I have no kindness. The fact was good to measure, yeah, because Rebbe always gives you the greatest, deepest sichas, and afterwards it's always a Pel Mamish. Because the Pel Mamish, that's what the Mesiras Nefesh is. Mesiras Nefesh is an animal to do something about it. It's a self-sacrifice I want to do about it. Whatever it is, it's a small thing, but it has to be something that has to be translated. Otherwise, it just stays somewhere around there. That's like the kofar hakli. It's something there, and it's not just nice, and not just willing, and not just loving. It's something that's really doing. Chaim.
Love it.
Yeah. What time is Friday? 11? I died Friday, yeah. Before I came, I stopped in the road and I did the Mincha Ma'ariv thing. You know the Mincha Ma'ariv thing? Huh?
What I did.
You daven Ma'ariv, they're still davening Mincha. You daven Mincha, they're davening really Ma'ariv. It's like,
Yeah. Am I in the camera, by the way? Oh, good. I wasn't.
The camera should
Yeah. When I come over and look at it, I'm not in it.
The camera should have been over there.
Sorry. Am I in the camera right now?
He's not in.
So where was I broadcast to?
The whole world.
The whole world, huh?
Yeah, good. Good job.